Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Crop. I'm Anna Heslop and my guest today is Southland-based Growers Leading Change facilitator Tony Fenton. Welcome, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Great to be on.
Now, you've been involved with two Growers Leading Change groups in Southland for the last 3 years, 2.5, 3 years in Southland and South Otago. So firstly, some questions for you. Do arable farmers in that region have particular issues that are quite different to elsewhere in the country?
Well, no, I don't think there's anything particularly that stands out. I mean, the two groups do cover a wide area in Southland. They sort of go from, out in western Southland right through to sort of Balclutha and, northern Southland. They're focused on all those things which I think most other growers are, like, maintaining their profitability. They've got, particularly, I suppose, at the moment, they're starting to feel a bit concerned about the dairy, the drop in dairy prices. And as everyone's had a lot of pressure in the last year or two with increasing input costs, I suppose they are seeing, anecdotally, people are saying they're seeing more, disease pressure and more pests coming in that, sort of 10 odd years ago, they might not have used as much fungicide or pesticide. So whether that's a reflection of slightly warmer times, hard to say, I suppose, but they are interested in, perversely, I suppose, there might be more opportunities in Southland in 10 or 20 years for some of these crops, but I suppose that's a sort of a wait and see game on that front. But generally, the rest of the issues that others are facing, like, nitrogen use efficiency, profitability, other opportunities, they're also interested down here. What other crops could they grow? What are the other opportunities? Business resilience. There's a whole lot of stuff that they talk about and want to cover off over time.
So what is their growing season? Because obviously it's going to be a bit different climatic based on the climate from elsewhere in the country.
Yeah, you're a bit later to get away in the spring, like now. Things are starting to dry up now and people are getting out and onto the fields again. But yeah, I think from what I understand, talking to the facilitators in Canterbury, we are a few weeks behind, sort of further north, and we don't quite get the heat units that you do further north through the summer, and so seasons tend to go out a bit later. Harvestings can be sort of out into that later, into sort of April, May times for the end of harvest year, which can prove a challenge in the if you get a wet an early autumn comes through, can be challenging for the growers down here at times.
Yeah, I seem to recall a couple of years back getting a photo from a grower down there who had snow on top of an unharvested crop, but I think they got there eventually.
Patience is what it takes, yeah. Okay,
so what sorts of things have your groups been doing to gain more understanding of those issues, which, as you've said, many of them are nationwide, around costs of inputs and efficiencies and environmental issues?
Yeah, I think I was thinking before I came on, and we actually visited between the two groups, we visited every farm of the people in the group over the last sort of 2.5 years. And I think, the growers really enjoy getting out and seeing what each other are up to, comparing notes, looking for new ideas. It's some growers are fully into min-till down here. So for some other growers to go to their properties and see how they've transitioned to a min-till or no-till system, they've sort of found really helpful. We had quite a lot of discussion early on about min-till particularly. But then others who are running mixed arable systems, and the discussions between them and those that have very little stock, if any, on the properties. I think, and it's been really good just sort of building some of that social network and relationships for the growers across Southland, just to, often they sort of know the name of their grower, but to actually be in a group and start to chat and look at each other's places and share ideas has been, one of the really rewarding things for being part of GLC down here. It's got a pretty good bunch of growers involved in the groups, and they've been really supportive of the project and really got on board. Some of the other aspects, I suppose, we have spent a lot of time in the last probably 18 months on nitrogen use. That was, as I mentioned a bit earlier, with urea going the way it did a year or so ago, everyone was like, well, okay, that sort of focused the discussion a little bit. We've run some farm tryouts on, we did 3 farms last year. 3 of the growers in one group put their hand up to try nutrient use efficiency sort of tryouts. And the year before that, we did a trial looking at David Bullmore's, looking at different fertiliser types down the spout when you're planting oats, just to see if that would make any difference to the end of the thing. So, the tryouts have been really useful in a number of ways. The results haven't been, earth-shattering. There's some challenges in getting good results out of a tryout, but they've been really good in terms of working through the principles of what we're trying to do, like nitrogen use efficiency with growers, having those discussions in groups, and then actually going out and looking at the tryouts, talking about what we're doing and why, how the calculations are done, giving the growers the confidence then to go off and, or other growers who aren't involved necessarily in the tryouts, to go off and try something in their own paddock. It sort of, I think, gives them the confidence to go, oh, I can, do a bit in that corner of that paddock, or I can try something myself and see how it goes, and then and sort of discuss that with other growers when they want to. So useful.
Can I just confirm, a tryout is a very informal, unscientific on-farm trial? Is that correct?
Informal, I suppose. Unscientific. There's science behind it. It's just not replicated and statistically robust. So there's still a science around, what's the objective you've got in the tryout. You might have replicates if the grower's has got enough space and is willing to take a bit more risk. You could do more replicates, and we did on some of them. But you're right, it's not a full-blown, researcher FAR type trial. It's growers doing some stuff in their paddocks, and I think it's been really useful in terms of it isn't the extent of that full-blown science, but what we're actually trying to do is get those principles, like, as I said, with the nitrogen use efficiency, was about doing your soil measurements, understanding your soil pool, setting up what do I do normally, what's my normal practice, what's a different decision I can make, and what data am I going to use to make that decision, and then doing that in the paddock. So it's as much about that decision-making process and building an understanding of more tools that you can use, whether that's like using the new PMN soil test, or whether it's using the hand sensor for leaf sensor to make different decisions. The results, as I say, they're not statistically robust, but they are indicating, from the trials have indicated the principles which we're applying, that, if you take the confidence to draw back a little bit on your nitrogen, you're managing, understanding your soil pool, you can actually be more efficient. And so, that's, I think, the sort of some of the key take-home stuff for growers.
So another take-home or an outcome is that you've developed a calculator around in-use. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I suppose I should say, standing on the shoulders of giants, really. I just took the work that other researchers had done, which is based around the new soil test, the potentially mineralisable nitrogen. So FAR's been involved in that with Plant and Food, developing that work. But essentially there's a guide to understanding and measuring your soil nitrogen pool, which Plant and Food have put out. I think it's on their website. Has all those calculations in it. So essentially I've just taken what is a 10 or 12-page document describing how to both do your soil sampling and then how to do the calculation when you get the results back from the lab, and put that into a nice, easy spreadsheet for growers who can get their soil results, plug in things like their mineral N and their PMN results, and then put it, what's their yield they're expecting, how much nitrogen would they normally put on, and then it guides them through that decision-making process about how much potential nitrogen might come available during the season from the soil, how confident do they feel about using that estimated pool, and then they can reduce their actual chemical fertilizer input and still hold their yields if the calculations all are right. So that's a useful tool, and it's got a whole lot of supporting material. It's also got the little calculator to do the quick in results. If farmers are using the quick in test out in their paddock and just want to work out what the kilograms a hectare of nitrate is in the soil at any time, it's in the same spreadsheet. And then there's some supporting material. People often ask, what are the different soil tests and what's total N versus, organic carbon and all these other sorts of things. So there's some information at the front and back of the tool in different spreadsheets to just sort of have it all in one handy little place for growers, really. So, that's the tool. So it's recently out. So, I'd advocate for growers to go to the FAR website and find it and have a look through and give it a go, really.
Great. So that's not the only tryout that you've done. Another one was looking at different types of fertiliser.
Yeah, that was we set up a trial at just out of Belfast 2 summers ago, and the idea was to just when you're establishing the oat crop was what was the difference between, say, broadcast spreading your fertiliser on versus putting it down the spout. And then we used, I think, 3 different forms of nitrogen. So we had, testing my memory now, I think it was Crop 16, and then we used one of the Yara products, and then we used something else, was it SOA? And that control. And the idea was to see, does that give? And the rest of the season, the fertiliser was consistent across those treatments, but did that putting the fertiliser types down the spout at the start versus broadcasting, and was there any difference between the different types? So it was a great little trial to set up, and it was useful for promoting the sort of discussion, but unfortunately at the end of it, it wasn't replicated, and there was no real difference between the types we put down the spout, and there was actually no difference between the broadcast versus down the spout. In hindsight, looking back at the soil data, it was probably the site wasn't hungry enough. It hadn't been, I think it had come out of greenfield oats the year before, whereas, if it had been, say, come out of second year wheat and gone into oats, it might have been a bit hungrier, and you might have got more of a distinction between the types of fertiliser and the broadcast versus down the spout. But as I say, it promoted that group we visited the site, had quite a bit of discussion around doing on-farm tryouts, and then 3 of the growers in that group put their hand up the next year to have a go at the one I've just been talking about on nitrogen use efficiency. So it was good. It's been a good sort of conduit to learning, really, even though the result didn't shake the world. So
your second group is looking at agronomy and rotations. Is that not something that, the growers got sorted out now, or what are they trying to find out, or what do they want to do differently?
Looking for that extra edge, I suppose, and a lot of the growers in that group are running mixed arable. So you've got some growers are running, just doing finishing lambs, versus others are actually got a breeding sort of breeding system on their farm. And I suppose a lot of them, that was really useful, that group going around and talking, each of the farm visits, talking about, well, what rotation strategy, I suppose, or sequence are they using? And we also did quite a bit around soil quality, looking at, how using some of the visual soil assessment tests that growers can do quite easily, comparing paddocks that had been in crop for quite a period of time versus, they'd been then back into pasture and had sheep on them. It was quite a useful discussion around how good that regenerative phase and having stock in the system is. But I suppose, you might think, have people got their optimal rotations already? What are they looking for? It sort of goes back to that first question about, are growers, do they have any particular issue were they looking for other crops and things down here? The answer is yes. Some of them are trying, putting peas in, and then they're trying, something else, and they're always sort of tweaking the rotation to try and manage both the stuff I just talked about, the soil structure and thinking about the long-term, health of their system, but also trying to get that extra edge around sort of return on investment profitability as well. And so that group, we've had quite a bit of discussion around some of the tools which FAR has done as well, like the cost of production spreadsheets, those things like, cost of production, gross margin versus cost of production, what the difference in that is, and then thinking about contractor cost versus machinery costs, all of those sort of aspects has been something that group spent a bit of time talking through as well, because it fits into that whole rotational discussion.
Okay, so big question here. Growers Leading Change was set up to sort of improve the arable industry in terms of financial and environmental sustainability. Do you think that those members of those groups, have they made progress in those areas?
I think so. It is hard to quantitatively measure, but qualitatively, if you're talking to people about, what did they enjoy or what have they learned, or what was the take-home sort of things from, whether it was a farm visit or workshops, they are questioning their current systems. So, I take from that they're going, well, they're looking for ways to improve. A good example is one of the younger growers, he picked up, Brad Lindsay picked up the work that we'd been doing, the nutrient tryouts in the other group, and sort of gave that a go himself on his own place. So, he took the information that was available, the plant and food guide, got the soil sampling done, and then, had a go at changing the rates of nitrogen he was using in some of his paddocks, and then measuring yields, so he got right into the whole soil sampling soils, changing, improving his decision making, and then looking at his yields in the end, and then doing the whole gross margins, and then building that confidence that, I saved a few dollars here on fertilizer, and I managed to do that without sort of penalising his yield. So I mean, that's, a good example, I think, of the growers picking some of that stuff up. We've got some of the, I suppose, legends in the industry, like Mike Solari's involved in the groups, and, Mike's tried so many rotations over the years and has settled on something that works very well for his place. But just to, have him talk to the group about why he's got to there and what he sees as the benefits and why that works for his system. And then to talk about other systems in that sort of context, I think it's good. I did make one note here that you talk about differences down here. Well, Southland is in the rollout for the freshwater farm plans. It's one of the early regions. So I think that's one thing for growers down here, that they're aware that that's coming reasonably soon for them, to have to revise their existing farm plans or get a new one. So we recently had an environmental compliance workshop with Environment Southland and Otago Regional Council talking about that sort of process. So, that was on the list when we reviewed the groups in May. That was, environmental compliance is one of the topics that came up, and it came up in the first, 2.5 years ago as well. So, I mean, they're well aware that that's something having to work towards. And I think GLC is really helping support that, I suppose, lifting that knowledge and getting ready for that work as well. And the e-check work that FAR's done over the year, most of the growers have done the e-check numbers who are in the GLC groups. So that's been sort of another aspect of knowing your numbers, I suppose, and knowing your numbers and looking for opportunities to trim your costs and be more profitable. Yeah.
So I was just thinking, we've talked about some of the financial and environmental benefits, but there'll be more than that. So there must be that group camaraderie, the social aspects, the learning from each other. What are the benefits there?
Oh yeah, they don't let them stop outside in a shed full of machinery, that's for sure. It's been great. We've had a few things where I've had both groups together, which has sort of built that network further as well. I think I mentioned at the beginning that a lot of the growers have really enjoyed going to each other's farms and getting to know some people that they might have just known in passing a lot better. We've had quite a few laughs over the years at different things. But I think the social connection and getting people together to discuss some of these what can be quite hard topics. And I've been really impressed with the groups in terms of their willingness to share, the openness, because it's sometimes hard to let people in the gate and then, admit that, well, I've tried this and it really didn't work. But the group's been really, really good for that. And then people have been, respectful and been willing to share themselves. So as I say, hard to quantify, but I think it's built a lot more sort of camaraderie and support around sort of arable sector down this way. So it's great.
So what's next for these southern groups?
Well, there's still plenty to do. I think there's been talk about resilience and how do you make your businesses more resilient? Times are highly flexible. You've got climate changing. You've got the dairy, as I mentioned. Some of them are concerned about where the dairy sector's at the moment, and that's going to push pressure on their pricings. I think the other groups, like at the moment, they're really starting to think about technology, innovation, that sort of resilience, diversification. There's a lot of topics, and I think it's probably trying to stretch out to more growers in the group, in the district as well. There's a lot of people who I think can benefit from being part of the network. And there's a lot of tools and discussion, whether that's work on production wise, helping you know your numbers and store them right through. There's just, I think there's lots. And just made me think of the rural professionals have been really supportive as well down here. The advanced ag crew have come along and supported. We've had Jim Risk from Balance coming and talking to the group, Plant and Food. So, just sort of getting those other rural professionals, researchers down into Southland and, standing in the paddock with the groups, I think it's great to see. And a big plug also to the FAR researchers who have come down and supported the group as well. They appreciate having them on the ground and being able to ask lots of questions. So, challenges always, we imagine, with a bunch of farmers, you get them out in the paddock and they put their hands in the pockets and stand there and look knowledgeable until you ask them for questions, and they can be a bit shy, but we've had a few laughs with that in the paddocks, and now when I look at them, they're much more open to asking questions than when I turned up 2.5 years ago. So that's been great to see. I think that's that confidence that's building and that sort of trust in talking about stuff.
Well, thank you, Tony, for your update on what's happening in Southland. And listeners, wherever you are in New Zealand, have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.